In this video, we will learn about how to execute database transactions in Altogic. Before getting into the specific nodes and specific properties, let's review database transactions. What we mean by a transaction, actually. Let's assume that we are modeling the backend of an e-commerce system, right? So you've got customers and they are placing orders and purchasing some products. When an order is placed by a customer, what typically happens? One thing is that definitely we insert a new order for a user, right? We are updating a table or a collection of a user. We process payments and updating the order status, say payment has completed and so on. We might also be adding a record for fulfillment, right? Informing people that they need to start preparing the product order for delivery. And you might be also reserving some products, right? For the purchased items, then maybe most probably you will be decreasing the inventory count and so on, but making a reservation for those products so they will be delivered to the customer. So if in one of the steps of this placing an order, if an error occurs, okay, if you update your database, for example, in the first two steps you updated your database, but in step 3 there was an error, then what happens? If you don't use database transactions, then your data integrity, you will face some data integrity problems, because these two, let's say, collections or models are updated, but these two other actions should also be completed in the database. So in case, if there is no transactions used, then there is a problem with the integrity of the data. If you use the transactions, most probably if one of the actions is one of the actions failed, then in that case the system most probably will not be applying all of those transactions, all of those actions in the database. If everything goes well, then you commit the transaction, basically. You make the changes in the database. If there is an error, then you roll back or cancel the transactions or cancel the actions that will be updating the database. Okay. So how we can execute transactions in Altogic. For this purpose, we will be doing a small exercise. What we will be doing is the following. We will be creating a new model called logs. Okay. We will not be needing the endpoints and the default services. And in this logs model, we will be keeping like simple logs the users of your applications are doing. Okay, so what we will be storing in here, we will be definitely storing an object reference, okay, to the user who made the action. Okay, the second thing we will be storing is maybe action type. Let me put here type. This will be in text and this will be a required field. By the way, user ID will also be required field and also indexed. Another thing, maybe we might be interested to learn about what was the IP address of the user, right? When that action has happened. Another information would be maybe the device type for statistical purposes. Okay. Another one would be definitely the timestamp when that specific action that we are logging has happened, and it can be indexed and required. Okay, so this is the log. What we will be doing is the following. We will be creating a simple sign-in service, okay, where the user will be providing his email address and password for authentication. We will authenticate the user, and after the authentication we will first set last login date to that current date and time, and on top of that one we will be inserting a log record, log the login activity in the logs model. Okay, so let's start with defining the endpoint. So the endpoint will be user login. Okay, let's put it like login. This will be a post request and it will be on the path of login, and the rooted service will be, we will be creating a new service login. Okay, let's create this one. Let's get into the details of this service. The first thing we will be doing is that we will be getting the email address and the password of the user. So in essence, we will be getting a user object. Of course, we will not be getting the full user data, but we will be getting only the email and the password fields of the user. So we are selecting users here. The next thing we will be doing is that we will be getting the get object value because this is coming from the body of the request, so we need to get the body part of the request. Okay, and what we first need to do is the following. We need to run a query in our database, not multi-objects but get single object by query. Okay, first we need to check in the users collection, in the users model, first we need to check if such email exists, right? This is the email is equal to the input that we are getting, the body, basically, email. Okay, if no such email exists, okay, in the database, this means that we need to return a response, right? No such user exists. Okay, maybe right now bad request, let's say, or unauthorized. Let's put it unauthorized. What happens if it is found? If there is an email address corresponding to that user, then we need to check the password, right? Whether the password is right, correct or not. So how we will be doing that one? We will be using the logic node in if else condition. Okay, we will be getting the user object that is found in the database. What we will be doing is the following. We will be comparing the password, right? There is a function for that purpose, eCompare. Okay, we store the user's password, by the way, encrypted, right? So we need to compare plain text password that we get from the user with the encrypted value. So the value that we are getting from the user is this one actually. Okay, the raw value, the plain text value. So we will be checking eCompare. Okay, so eCompare the raw value, the one that we want to check, with the one that is in the database, which is this one. And this function returns true if the encrypted password and the plain text version of the passwords match. Okay, so let me write this one. So what happens? Okay, if true, okay, false. If not true, false. So what happens is the following. This if else condition node basically executes that condition. If it is true, then triggers this one. If it is false, then triggers this output. So if the passwords do not match, then we will be returning back the error response. Okay, if the passwords match, okay, then the testing purposes, let's return the user object. Okay, user information. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's testing out. Let's test this. Okay, for our testing purposes, I already created a user. This is John Adams, and the user ID is this one. So let's test the login service. Okay, let's pin this here. We will just need the email address and the password of the user. So the email of John is johnemail.com. Okay, and his password is pwd12345. Okay, let's check this one. Okay, so it returned a success response, right? So the password is matching. So what happens, for example, if I put a email address which is not in the database? This should return an error response. Yes, there's an error response here. Okay, what happens if the password is not right? Again, an error message. Okay, for the correct password, we've got the right information. Okay, so what we will be doing is the following. Let's continue with the service. So the thing that we will be doing is the following. We need to update the last login date of John. Okay, so he is logging again to our application, so we need to update the last login date in his user model. Okay, so update single update object field by ID. This is the node that we'll be using. This is the user object that we get from the database. So we will be updating a user object. The object ID will be ID of the user. Okay, and the field that we will be updating is last login. Okay, and it will be now, the current date and time. Okay, I'm doing it step by step for you to see it. Okay, let's connect this one. Let's connect this one. Let's see how this works. Okay, so currently the last login date of John is 14 minutes 30 seconds. Let's see what happens. We run this thing again. Okay, this should be updated. Yeah, this is 49:51. So last login date has been updated. Okay, let's continue. So this is the first thing that we do. The second thing that we need to do is we need to create a record in the logs table, right? We need to create an entry in the logs table. For that purpose, we will be using the create single object node. But this single object node expects as input a logs entry, logs object. So we need to create a logs object on the fly. So what we'll be doing is we will be using this node, create object node, okay. And after updating the user's last login date in the database, we will be creating a user logs object, okay. And we will be setting the following fields for this log object, okay. So what's the device type? Device type is coming from the params, okay. What's the IP? Again, the IP is coming from the client IP. Timestamp, we will be putting now, okay, the current date and time. Type, actually this is, I get a typo here, I guess, right? This should be type. Okay, let's go back here. Let's go back here. Here, sorry. Okay, I need to add it back here. Okay, it's type. Okay, so the type will be login action, right? This is a login, and this is the type of the action is login. So we created that one also. Any errors here? Let me see what kind of errors we have. User ID. Okay, user ID. We also need to specify the user ID. Where is the user ID? Here. Okay, and the user ID will be ID of the user. Okay. We are getting the ID as an input here. We are setting the ID of the user. So let's create also this object in the database. The object that we'll be creating is a logs object. As a result, let's return the logs object plus the user that we updated in the database. So let's make them clear. This is log and this is user. Let's run this thing this time. Okay, let's hit send. Okay, so we get two results, right? The log part and the user part, right? This time let me refresh this thing. Okay, last login is 52:33, 52:33. Yeah, and this is 52:33. Okay, so the both of them have the same timestamp, almost near. Okay. So this time it is working, right? I mean, we are both updating the last login date and also inserting a record to the logs table. So let's also look to the logs table, by the way. Okay, let's create another service to see the logs entries. Get logs, let's put get logs. Okay. And we will be creating a new service for this one. Get logs. Okay, this will be a very simple service. So we will be basically get multi-objects by query. Okay, we will be getting the data from the logs. So we will be getting the first 10. That's fine. Let's return success response. Okay, if I go back here, if I pin this thing here, there should be just one entry in the logs table, right? Because we just run this login with the logs record on, putting the logs record on just once. Okay, let's run this thing again. This is 52:33. Okay, 54:11. So we should have set two records in the logs table. Yeah, 54:11. Okay, so let's do a case. Let's simulate a case right now. Okay, let's simulate a case where this database action will fail. Okay, how can I simulate that one? In the create object, I know that the type of the type of the log is a mandatory field, right? Let me go back to here in the logs. If I go here, this is a required field. Okay, if I go back here and create object, I excluded the type, so I'm sending a data as input to this node. It's expecting basically a type, and since it's not getting the type, then this node will fail. Okay, and Altogic will throw an error message. Let's see what will happen. Okay, let's get the latest user object. This is the last time 5411, the login date and time. Okay, let's run this thing. In this case, it should fail. Okay, it's failed because the type field is missing. But what happened? What happened to the last login date? It was originally 5411. This is 5518. So this is updated. What about the logs table? Did we get a log? No. Okay, so what happened is the following. Since we are not using the transaction, this node has performed successfully. It updated the last login date. Okay, but this node has failed. Okay, this node has failed. So the logs table, we couldn't able to add an entry to the logs table. So this is a problem, right? I mean, in order to ensure the data integrity, those two actions should be happening together. So in order to prevent this, we need to run these activities, these two activities, within the context of a transaction. How we will do that one? We go to the start node. At the bottom of the start node, there is a field called database transaction. We click on that one. It will be asking you a name. Keep it like transaction. That's fine. Okay. Then what we need to do is the following. We will be running this node within the context of that transaction. Okay. When I click on this thing, I can see the newly created transaction object that I can use, and we should also run this thing within the same transaction. Okay. Okay. So let's test this time what will happen, because since we are running it in transaction, since it will fail, okay, for the failed operations, Altogic automatically aborts the transaction. If there's a transaction, Altogic makes automatic abortion. Okay, it will terminate the transaction, it will cancel the transaction, roll back the activities, and so on. Okay, abort the transaction. So let's run this thing again. Okay, let's get the last login time 5518. Let's run this thing. Okay, error. It should be the same, 5518. It should not be updated. Yes, it didn't update because we are using a transaction. There should not be any record here. Yes, because that one failed. Okay, let's correct the error. Okay, let's put back here the type parameter, and let's put here login. This time it will work, but since it will work, we didn't put the commit transaction here. Okay, so let's run it here. Okay, again, nothing will change. Okay, even we've got the logs, data, and so on. Let's run this thing. Let's see whether this has changed or not. This has not changed. Okay, whether this has changed, this has not changed. Okay, why is not changing? Because for successful operations, we should commit the transaction. Okay, so we need to put here, okay, I completed everything fine. Let's commit all the changes to the database. Okay, then after that one, return back the information. Okay, so which transaction we will be committing? We will be committing the transaction that we created. Okay, so let's run this thing. This time the user last login date should be updated, and we should get an additional entry. Okay, so the last time the user has logged in is 5518. This time 5849. Let's check whether it has been updated. Yes, 5849. We should have a third entry here. Yes, 5849. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is how you configure transactions in Altogic. It's quite a powerful feature, right? I mean, you can run multiple database activities in a single service, and you can use transactions to ensure data integrity. I hope this helps. Thanks a lot for watching.